I'm Jared Littner, and in this series of vlogs, we're going to do a recap over the 2009 Bassmaster Elite Series season. To start off with, we're going to talk about Amistad and Lake Dardanelle, both exciting tournaments. Amistad, of course, took some huge weight. It was won by Jason Williamson. His primary bait he was throwing was an Osprey light hitch, and basically what he was fishing is a big, giant flat that had a creek channel that would run through it. And the fish were coming up to spawn. There was also some that were leaving from spawning. When the bites kind of slowed down, he picked up his Zoom 10-inch old monster worm and just threw it right on the edge of the creek channel near the brush and the trees and picked off some good fish doing that. But his primary bait again was the light hitch Osprey. I mean, it was won pretty much with the same bait last year or the year before by Todd Faircloth. My approach to the tournament was, we got to the lake and it was 95 degrees, hot, fish were on beds. Throughout the week, we had an extreme cold front come through and a lot of the fish vacated the beds. One of my go-to baits was this homemade swim bait. You know, it's a light hitch color. Hopefully the guy that's making this for me will soon make a mold and it'll be available to everybody because it's an awesome swim bait. And I was basically fishing pre-spawn areas, making a real long cast, throwing the Revo Toro reel on an 8-foot swim bait rod by Powell. And that combination, you know, is deadly for throwing swim baits. The main thing I was doing though, besides the swim bait, something West Coast style, it's called brass and glass, but basically what it is, I was throwing a 3/16 ounce tungsten weight with a tournament force bead on a Cinco. And what I was doing was targeting staging fish. They were, again, like Williamson, they were coming and going. And I found a grass line, make a real long cast, and just sitting there shaking that thing right on the edge of the grass. Fish would come over and eat it. I probably caught, I don't know, 30, 40 fish a day throwing this bait. Another bait I was throwing in between, you know, when the wind picked up and they weren't really aggressive on a swim bait, was a Squad Minnow by JACKALL. This is a special color. Hopefully Tackle Warehouse is going to have them in stock pretty soon. It's kind of like a light bluegill perch looking bait. It's awesome. I mean, every year I've been to Amistad, I catch them on that bait. Okay, the next tournament is Dardanelle. Due to the cold front, as we just talked about at Amistad, the river system that we were fishing, the water temps were dropping, and the river, they were making room for all this water, so they started sucking the water out. The fish were in the backwater still though, and basically that's how the tournament was won. Mark Menendez did an awesome job. He actually had an aluminum boat. He pushed his way under a culvert, got back in there, and his main baits that he caught all these fish on were these coffee tubes by Strike King. He's flipping those, and also flipping a rage-tail lizard. And basically had the whole area to himself, and you know, there was tons of fish in there, and it was just a matter of hitting them at the right time, you know, making repetitive flips into the bushes and laydowns. And in between then, you know, in between the laydowns and stuff, he's throwing a Strike King Series 3 crankbait and just covering the water, you know, in between, like I said, in between the laydowns, the logs, bushes, bridge pilings, whatever he was coming up to. I, on the other hand, I couldn't get my big skeeter back in there into a lot of the backwaters, but I did find some pretty sweet spots. I just kind of ran out of fish, if you will. But one of my main baits, I was basically narrowed it down to 2 baits, was a Picasso tournament force spinnerbait, white and chartreuse. I like this Indiana blade in the cold, muddy water. It puts off a lot of vibration. It's easy for the fish to find, and you could really slow that bait down and kind of, you know, sneak up on them, or kind of a finesse type of spinnerbait than right there in your face. But my main bait for Dardanelle, I actually met Kota Kiriyama on the water one day. I think it was the first day of practice. He's a fellow JACKALL pro staff member. And he says, hey man, we got these new baits. Nobody has them yet. And it's called a SASUTEKI CRAW. It's kind of hard to say. He gave me a handful, and that's what I ended up catching them on. It's, you know, there's a lot of other baits they're similar, like a chigger craw or a packer craw. But this bait, to me, just has a real natural action, and it's not, you know, it doesn't have the big flapping motions, but it's a real good presentation for when the fish are sluggish and and you know, you want something different than everybody else is throwing. And I was rigging that on 25-pound test with a 765 Powell flipping stick, you know, and just making repetitive flips to laydowns and stumps. And basically that's how the tournament went. Check back next week. We're going to talk about Wheeler and Smith Mountain Lake.